You're live. Welcome to the House Environment Committee. We are looking at an amendment to H 915, the bottle redemption PRO from Representative Campfield. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, folks, for giving me plenty of exercise this afternoon. So, as Large Council explained to those that were here, Section 13, the effective dates has changed. The first, number one, Section 1, handling fees for redemption of containers shall take effect on January 1, 2027. So the reason for this delay is to allow distributors sufficient time to make changes necessary to implement the increased handling fee. That includes internal processes within the distributors, as well as work within their retail partners, work with their retail partners. Handling fees are included in the prices distributors charge the retailers and ultimately flow to consumers through the price they are charged at the register. So, any questions?
The only date that's changed is the handling fees to January 1, 2027.
Yes.
This amendment.
That's correct.
So questions for Representative Campfield?
That's probably more for the budget council.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just, what is this being changed from? Just
July 1, 2026.
okay, so it would just take effect.
6 months delay.
Gotcha.
Representative North.
What's the driving reason for pushing it out 6 months?
I just read that. You want it again?
Yes.
The reason for the delay is to allow distributors sufficient time to make the necessary changes necessary to implement the increased handling fee. That includes internal processes within the distributors, as well as working with their retail partners. Handling fees are included in the prices that the distributors charge the retailers and ultimately flow to the consumers through the prices that they are charged at the register.
So the need for the 6 month delay is to what, renegotiate prices or?
It's for working it within their system with all the different stores that they deliver to and increase prices.
What does working it within the system entail? You know? Adding a penny per container, I think.
I don't have those details.
Did you want to say something, Chris Rice, or no?
Sorry,
Okay.
I didn't hear the question.
What does, I remember the exact phrase, handling it within their system, modifying it within, what all does that entail? I mean, we're just adding also, I don't want to make it sound trivial, but we're adding a penny per container. Just wondering, what does that entail in terms of changing it within the system?
So for the different members, I presume there are different processes internally for allocating that on the containers in terms of how they distribute the product, how they negotiate those prices, what each of those internal processes are. I don't have insight into. That's what my understanding is. They have, generally speaking, they have an internal process to allocate that, price the product accordingly, and an external process to negotiate those prices with their retail partners. It's not something that is easy to do with a flip of the switch, as I understand it. And that's what, as I said to you, to the committee earlier, it's simply to allow folks the time to do that in an orderly, thoughtful way to make sure that it's done correctly.
Representative Chapin.
Can you, I have a question for Chris Rice. Can you describe how this conversation went on the Senate side. I'm concerned that if we make a change here, especially if the Senate already considered it, we're sending the bill to die. So I guess it's a pretty big decision to me to make a suggestion to change the bill at this point. So I'm just curious if the Senate heard this testimony from you or others and what the conversation was like on the Senate
I'm
side.
not aware of any committee discussion of this particular issue. It's something that, as the bill was coming out of the Senate, the issue rose. I'm not sure how many people had what conversation in the Senate or, but my recollection is that this was not a committee discussion. Representative Campbell can share with you his conversation with Chair of the Senate Natural Resources Committee, but I'm having a hard time recalling that we talked about largely everything else. They had a pretty thorough conversation, especially in the Natural Resources Committee. But I don't think this is one of the issues that we talked about in terms of delaying the effective date to allow for implementation on the handling fee increase.
The handling fee was changed in that
The
committee,
increase was put in the Senate, correct?
in the Natural Resources Committee. And you testified on it?
Sorry, Sue.
And you testified on it at that point?
Bree Deatley, who testified in this committee, testified on that issue in both the Senate Natural and Senate Finance Committee. They registered our objection to it.
If Representative, you have any information on how much they considered this in the Senate, that would be helpful for me.
I don't know. I talked to the chair of Senate Natural Resources and she didn't have strong feelings either way, but I'm not sure. She was talking to me, I don't think it was for her committee. I
Thanks.
talked to the Senate secretary who said there's time for this, that it wouldn't kill the bill as far as with rule suspensions.
As far as rules. Anyway, Representative Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just for my clarification, I guess, and I should know this, but I'm defaulted the information, so I will ask the question. And you said that the manufacturers are charging the retailers for the handling fee.
Yeah, they charge the retailers the cost up front.
Only the nickel.
I'd have to defer to.
I believe they only charge the nickel. The retailers.
They charge the retailers the nickel, but the cost of the handling fee is incorporated into the cost of the product that's sold to the retailer. So effectively, I think what Rep. Canfield and Chris Rice are saying is that they need time to review their contracts with retailers to determine if the price needs to change.
Because I'm trying to remember the map of follow the nickel. I think that was put out.
Nickel's the deposit, Christie,
Is the deposit.
not the handling fee.
Not changing the deposit.
Correct, which was why I was asking the question, do the retailers get charged for the handling fee? And how do they get
Indirect.
reimbursed on that from the customer when they buy it, but they only get back a nickel on the deposit if the bottles are returned.
It's just,
So the handling fee isn't reimbursed, right?
Right.
So it's just the manufacturer distributor incorporates a handling fee into the cost of the product, sells it to the retailer. When Tomra comes and picks up everything and then assesses the distributor their bill, that's when they use the handling fee that they've collected on the price of the product to pay Tomra for what Tomra has paid to the retailer redemption centers.
So how does that work with the unclaimed sheets? The handling fees aren't incorporated into that, are they?
No, so the unclaimed sheet is just a
Just the-
deposit. It's just the nickel. Because you own the nickel. The consumer owns the nickel, right? It passes down through you, when you come in and you pay for your product, you give the retailer the nickel. That nickel is yours. It's just you got to trade it for an empty container. It has nothing to do with the hand.
I get that. But my point is, there's a handling fee out there that the real retailers are charging the customers for. When it gets to the redemption center, not all containers come back. So, but they had paid for the handling fee.
I understand what you're saying now. Yes, they collect on the cost of the product the handling fee. Maybe the handling fee isn't 3.5 cents per container because they've spread it across those that they know that might be abandoned. Or maybe they're just making a profit off of the abandoned.
So it's less than the whole cost. So back to the basic math of these problems.
That was the reason for my question, because it sounds like the manufacturers potentially aren't paying out for all those handling fees to the it gets lost for the translation from the retailer to the consumer to the redemption center back to the PRO.
Representative Sakowicz.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts, but this brings up a really interesting one, which you would think I would know the answer to after all the time we've spent on this bottle stuff. But that's, I guess I don't know if we've ever had this particular conversation before, but I always sort of assumed that the handling fee transaction took place when the bottles were, basically brought back, made their way back up to the manufacturer, that the bottles which went to the recycling centers, in the blue bin system, those never got back. And so then those are the ones that where these sheets were generated, because that nickel was paid up front, but that the handling fee was not paid up front. And so that handling fee was paid on a literal per container basis. But what I'm hearing here is that that's not correct.
I thought it is paid on a literal per container piece. The point is, it's not paid on everyone because not
But
everyone
on-
gets handled.
But I'm saying, but paid on the ones that are just handled. That was what I.
It is paid on just the ones that are handled, but the manufacturer's charge supposedly is what they're saying now. Now they're passing that on to the retailers.
Okay, I guess I thought they were charged just on the ones that were handled.
They are.
But we're hearing that they're charged for all the
Well-
containers, even the ones that never come back.
Yeah.
Charged outgoing.
Right.
Yes,
I think you just need to think of it like the cost of any EPR program is incorporated into the cost of the product. Part of this EPR program, the existing EPR program, because it is an EPR, is the handling fee. And that handling fee is incorporated into the cost of the product. Whether or not upfront, whether or not it does ultimately pass down to a retail redemption or a redemption center, does depend on how Rev Morris noted, whether or not it is redeemed. But that cost is still part of the cost of the product.
And the manufacturers all could be enjoying the handling fees that don't get redeemed. That's.
True, I think.
it's there.
I'm happy to answer that if you want to. So I understand your question. Can I share this with you? This is from A&R. That's kind of follow the nickel. That helps with the basic question.
It's the nickel.
Yeah.
Like the nickel.
Yeah, we're talking about it also tracks the handling fee as well. In addition to and above the handling fee are pickup costs, processing costs. There are other pieces of this larger EPR system that the manufacturers or distributors bear. And as your legislative counsel said, the cost of that is baked into the cost that they charge the retail. How each distributor does that for the different brands is part of their own individual pricing structure. I don't think, to your last point, I don't think there are, at least not the ones that I know, enjoying the handling fee charges as a profit center for them, that they've got that down to as low a cost as they can manage to keep their products as competitively priced as possible. That gives you a general description of how all of that flows together.
No, I guess I'm struggling with the fact that this Senate has been talking about this increase since at least May 13th, when we walked through the changes to get ready for this moment. So the industry didn't come to us and say they couldn't do July 1 when we had an increase in the handling fee that we had. They didn't come on May 13th or before to the Senate and say they needed it January. And we're getting an 11th hour request to change it to January, when we're right down to the line on a bill that's been very negotiated. It's a very negotiated deal that's been worked out, and just really struggling with why this is necessary now when it wasn't necessary at all before today.
Yeah, and just to reiterate the point that the chair made earlier today, which is that the increase in the handling fee for the non-commingled has been in the bill for a much longer period of time than that. And presumably, we didn't hear about that being a problem for July 1 either. So it's really hard to see why we should be talking about this now, other than the fact that this is just really easy for the industry to make their point and to try something. There's no real cost to them for giving it a shot. The cost is borne by us who have to sit here and think about this at the last minute. It's really unfortunate.
Representative.
Yeah, and I guess building on the questions that Representative Morris raised, our redemption rate is about 72%. We're really only talking about 0.72 of a penny that they're actually being costed. That it's actually costing the producers, because that increased 1 penny only gets paid out on 72 out of 100 containers.
When they recycle.
When they're actually redeemed, not like when they're actually redeemed. And the redemption center sends the bottles to the processor to remelt or make them back in bottles again. It's at that point that they get the count. And it's at that point, the producer writes the check for the number of containers that were processed, with the now proposed extra penny. And so the real question is, so 0.7 of a penny on how many containers are we talking about between now and the end of the year? A number was floated earlier with us. It was on the order of close to $2 million. And I don't know if that's an annual figure, if that's the full 4.5 cents on all of the bottles, or if that's just the one additional 1 penny, or maybe it's the only additional 0.72 of a penny that's the actual cost. Is it for a whole year or just 6 months? I don't know. Can we answer some of those questions?
Happy to. So that 1.8, nearly $2 million a year is based on penny the container for the number of containers that are redeemed annually. So that's not the number of containers sold minus the fraction that are not redeemed. That is nearly 200 million containers a year redeemed at a penny a piece. That's what that number is based on.
So 200 million containers per year. So we're only talking half a year. So it's only 100 million containers that we're talking about in the 6-month period we're referring to here. So that's really only $900,000, not 1.8 million. And really, and if that truly is the number of redeemed containers, not the actual containers sold, we don't need to multiply that by 72%. So we're still at $0.9 million as the total impact. And I guess that sounds like some probably very small percent of the overall business that's done in the state of Vermont in relative to these products that are contained in these containers. And that might be just a small incentive to encourage them to figure that, how that, to incorporate that into their prices between now and January 1st. But I guess without the amendment, it gets the extra penny into the hands of these very struggling redemption centers 6 months earlier. And since the whole thing only lasts for, it's temporary, it only lasts for, what was it, two years? It expires in 29. A little over 2 years, 2.5 years. So if we take 6 months off of the 2.5 years, and that's down to not much.
Sorry, the increased handling fee lasts for 4 years.
Right.
Yeah, Erin.
Erin Segrist, lobbyist for a coalition of redemption centers around the state. There are more than a dozen who have joined together during this process. Just to speak on process, the redemption centers were approached last Thursday about this proposal. We tried spending the weekend getting some type of a consensus about pushing the timeline back 6 months. We can certainly understand the change in the middle of the year. Had this proposal come forward a month ago or even 2 weeks ago, we probably would have said, yes, let's move forward. But at the last minute, 72 hours, as one of the members in House Ways and Means reported, they're bringing this proposal. These guys, the redemption centers, have not had an increase in 20 years. And we can understand the cost to the distributors and manufacturers. Redemption centers haven't had an increase in 20 years. So that's $1.72 million or whatever it is for the last 20 years they haven't seen. Just please keep that in mind. They were approached last minute, last week. We tried to work with them, but we are very concerned that this is an attempt to not get across the finish line. Also, this amendment does not extend or push the increase back on the back end, right? So now we're going from 4 years of an increase to 3.5 years. So if we're trying to give redemption centers an increase, you're taking it away if we pass this amendment. And I do think the committee, you just spoke extensively about this morning and the concern that you would have not making it across the finish line if you made an amendment.
Representative Pritchard.
Maybe I missed it, but what was the straw poll on this in your committee?
The straw poll on this amendment in Ways and Means was unfavorable, 6-3-2.
Unfair.
All right, any further questions on this or discussion? Things what folks want to ask or say?
I just want to say, I don't want to jeopardize this bill. We need to do that, get this going.
Okay, great. All right, all those who find the amendment unfavorable, please raise your hand. 11 of us.